Welcome to part 3 of our conversation about race in this series on the church in the world. This last part of our conversation goes a little bit more in depth than the last couple, also has a few action steps and areas where we can learn and grow. So I encourage you to listen with an open heart and an open mind and take the seat of a learner. All right, so Canada does not have a spotless past regarding slavery or the treatment of the Black community. It's definitely lesser known than south of here, but it's not spotless. I guess a question I would be curious is, how does talking about it or acknowledging it actually produce progress? And because that doesn't logically flow for me, but at the same time, I'm very curious and I'm checking my motives if it's just, I just don't want to acknowledge it because just the obvious, it was people like me, you know? So, oh, well, like I wasn't there, I didn't do it, that doesn't help. How does talking about it, acknowledging it, bring progress and reconciliation? Denise, you got the notes. Start us off.
Yeah.
You're never going to come prepared again.
Notes, yeah. Just like, okay. I think it goes back to what Colleen has said about the history of slavery. Mm-hmm. I think the more that you learn about the impact, so it wasn't, okay, so you had slavery, it ended. But then after that, you know, what happened was there was a law in the US where if you did not have a job and you were Black man, you were arrested. They put them in jail. Then the owners of the different, you know, like cotton fields, et cetera, could hire these guys out, and this is what they would do. And so they would take them out of jail. So, like, I mean, again, if you think about that, so you again are fragmenting the families. You are only Black men were put in jail. Like, you know, all of these inequalities that started, and, you know, again, you go into Jim Crow laws, all the segregation, all of these things and this is not that long ago, we're talking like, you know, maybe like 50 years ago, that a lot of this was still impacted. Like I think the last school in Canada that was segregated was 1965. It's not that long ago. Wow. That was closed. And so, you know, I think people need to understand, need to take the time to learn and understand. And the more that you do that, hear these stories, the more you're going to understand why things are the way they are. Mm-hmm. And when we understand why there's so much brokenness in the community, then it's like, okay, you have more empathy, and then you can make change. If I just sympathize with you, I'm just like, oh, I feel sorry for you. But if I empathize, I really care, I'm gonna now wanna take action to, again, going back to that, being that ally, being that advocate for someone.
Okay, so I'm gonna tap into the teacher here. Any direction or resources for educating yourself? So let's say somebody's watching and they're like, wow, I had no idea that 1965, or wow, that this was such a big thing in Canada. Like, just anything you could direct them to that's beyond racism in Canada, Google search?
Yeah. Oh, I should have brought a list. I can get some for you.
Cool. Yeah, and maybe we can post them or something.
Yeah, because there are really a lot of great resources out there.
Great.
You know, a lot of great resources.
Perfect. Why don't we circle back to that, and we can post it into the video or something.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that ahead of time, so don't worry. I just thought of that as you were saying this. What about somebody else? How does talking about this bring progress? How does acknowledging the ugly past bring about a better future?
I feel like just in anything, the more you learn about something, the more your subconscious just catches it. So like when someone hears, for God so loved, like, you know, John 3:16, it's just like in your head. So like the more you learn about how systemic racism affected Black people, prejudices towards Black people, if you learn more and you want to be that friend and like this shouldn't happen at all, and then like someone says something to me that's kind of like off-putting, like it'll trigger you, like just because you've learned so much, you'll be like, whoa, that wasn't a cool thing that he just said to you or she just said to you. Mm-hmm. kind of thing. Because like a lot of the times, people don't see it, and it just someone could say something blatant to me, and people just walk by like nothing happened, right? Because they don't know that that's an offensive thing to say to a black person, or like you shouldn't say that to someone. Like so, like the more you learn, you just learn like, whoa, like you shouldn't say that to like someone or something. Like for me, when I was a teenager, I couldn't wear in this neighborhood a red jacket. I just knew that for me to be a teenager wearing a red jacket would affiliate me automatically with being in the blood gang.
Oh,
And
okay.
would have to deal with like police officers or just random people in blue who are part of those gangs who just want to stir up problems, right? It wasn't just like police officers, it was just like other people who just had bad intentions or ill intentions.
But a white kid could have worn the red.
Yeah, easy.
Okay. Rachel, anything to add on this?
Yeah,
How
I would
talking
just
about
say
it?
sometimes people think that what is happening in the States is like so bad, but it's not happening in Canada.
That's so far away, yeah.
So they say a lot of times people would be like, oh, wow, that's so terrible what's happening in the state, and they would get angry about it, but they're like, this is not happening in Canada, or this is not happening in our neighborhood. And I think we need to recognize that it is happening in Canada, and that there are, as you hear today, that there are experiences that your own brothers and sisters that experience it. So I hope that after today and listening to these stories, that you'll be like, if you are one of those people that are like, racism doesn't exist in Canada, I hope that you say, okay, wow, and be more conscious aware of it.
Okay. Colleen?
Yeah, so I feel that definitely we need to acknowledge and start conversations, because that's where we will progress. If you have ever been to you're a pastor, TJ. You give counseling, I'm sure, many times over. And so you ask the person, so tell me your story. What happened? What led you to sitting in my chair today? We want those conversations, because when those conversations start to happen, then we can see empathy, just as Denise said, and you can start to understand where the Black man, woman, child is coming from. There's trauma associated with all this behavior that you see happening, and it's unchecked, unacknowledged trauma. That's where we need to dig deep and deal with the trauma that has happened.
So acknowledging it is part of this. I'm going to go out on a limb here. Maybe don't mention any names or give too specifics, but what about your guys' stories inside of our faith community? Care to share anything? Because I'm guessing that there's still an element for those watching, or for somebody like me listening and kind of participating but not really experiencing, that this is still theory, that this is out there, but we're the body of Christ. Care to share how we have areas to grow?
Yeah, there was an example when I was younger here. Someone came up to me after a service and said, thank you for being a part of Rexdale, really appreciate having you here. However, the clothes that you come in, they should be changed or updated to fit the mold. I don't think they said fit the mold, but basically to fit the mold. Because what I was wearing was not good enough. Me being a teenager with like no job and just being provided from my mom and family of what I had to wear.
I would say my experience has been more subtle. And I think sometimes that's actually more dangerous, to be honest, where it's people I've seen. I mean, I've been going to church for a long time. I've seen you, and it's that barely acknowledging you. But then you see them go and see someone else who looks like them, and they're like, huh, and it's that it's a difference in terms of the interaction. And I mean, I can say that that's very recent, since like the last time, we were back in church. So it happens. And for me, that it is discouraging because I feel like this is my church. I should feel the most welcomed here. Whereas I play tennis in it's all white. I'm the only Black person there. And I don't feel it. So sometimes, sometimes, and I'm not saying that everyone's like that, but there are some times when I have felt it. And there have been other situations where it was a little bit more blatant, but definitely sometimes more, it's so subtle, acknowledge it, just lack of acknowledging you as an individual, as a, like, and for me, it's, that's really hurtful.
Colleen?
Yeah, this is a difficult one for me because I have experienced so much love at Rexdale, but at the same time, there's always room for improvement, especially when you will, just be told something like, the church is not a revolving door for certain things. Like if somebody comes to ask for something and maybe they return more than once, a comment would be made like, them again. And I know it's because the person is of a certain color. So, yeah, and I have friends who feel like, yes, they go to Rexdale, but they might not feel like they are part of the community because there's just still this distrust when it comes to the Black-white story.
And Rachel, I know you said your experience is a bit different being biracial. Do you feel you have anything to add to this part of the conversation, or is this one where you don't feel like it's been part of your story?
Really, no.
Okay. So we've been hinting at this one question because it's the one that I just find so interesting and so complex. One of my hopes, but it's very presumptuous, is as the lead pastor here, and I'm a white guy, that somehow hosting this conversation moves us forward. But there's a lot of assumption in that statement that almost like, oh, you guys are lucky that I'm helping you. And so the question becomes how does a person use privilege in a good way to pursue justice and mercy and preserve the image of God in somebody without turning a people group into their project, or that condescending, let me help you because you can't do this on your own. And somewhere in there's a good question. I didn't say it, but somewhere in there. So any thoughts on that? I think it was you, Denise. I wrote it down. I didn't write down who said it, but somebody said, we are so far behind and we are playing catch up. Speaking of the Black community. So that seems to tie into this question. How do you, is there a way for privilege to help in the process of catching up, or not? Or, and again, an example that comes to my mind, Sheryl Sandberg, she is the COO, or was the COO of Facebook. And she wrote a book, and it was specific about women in work and a lot of the setbacks and challenges that women face. And she was kind of implying, if I'm remembering the book accurately, and I'm probably not, but that we should be actively giving leadership roles to women if we want balance. And I heard one woman challenge that, saying, no, I don't want it to be handed to me. I want it because I earned it. And it was just an interesting perspective hearing these two sides of a conversation, both from women, both on this topic. So with that kind of as a backdrop, how do we pursue equality, pursue justice, pursue these things? How do you use privilege without turning it into a project?
Can I answer? Yeah.
Please.
So
Denise
I
is
think,
just excited that she doesn't have to go first.
yes, I was trying to save you, Denise.
Thank you, my dear.
So I think that Rexdale already has a perfect ministry where this is happening. White people being Caucasians and white people being allies and using the privilege. I have experienced that in Women Rise. It used to be Moms Rise when I joined, and I feel that this ministry has done so much of that for those of us who started out as mentees. I'm a product of it, so much so that I am now a mentor, one of the mentors. So if we can sort of follow that trajectory that Moms Rise has started, taking people who are Black or men, women who are Black and just mentoring. We're learning on both sides of the aisle here, because I'm pretty sure that the mentees will tell you that the women who have mentored them have done so much for them, become allies, use their privilege to help them move on from where they were. So I feel we already have that. Now, if we can just duplicate that, we'll be good.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. And I think when you're coming alongside somebody, the key is being able to see their areas of gifting, and acknowledging that. And so you're coming alongside them and saying, you know what, you are really gifted in this area. And I'm going to try to help you, or how can I help you, grow in that area? And that's what, again, that story with Tony Evans. Dr. Dobson, he saw this talent in this man. He didn't write a letter just because Tony Evans was Black. He saw that this man had a gift, a spiritual gift, and came alongside him. And I think, again, it sounds like that's what's happening here in Moms Rise as well. The other story I had with Althea Gibson, who was a tennis player, first Black woman to play in Wimbledon. She wasn't allowed to play at Wimbledon because she was Black. But there was, again, a friend of hers who recognized this woman is like, she's the best player in the world, and she's not allowed to play in the most prestigious tournament because she's Black. She wrote scathing letters. She was a Caucasian woman. She wrote letters. Althea got into Wimbledon, won that year. So, and that's the difference, as opposed to just, I think that's a key. That's working alongside the individuals and helping them to grow is a key in that area.
Doesn't Rachel?
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's got to be your heart. If you just want to use your platform because you can use your platform and you have a Black mascot, I feel like the person who you're trying to advocate for is going to feel that, and it's not going to be genuine. But if you have a passion for that person, and all those examples that they have a passion for that person, they see their gifts and they wanna lift them up, like God commands us. It shows more. It really shows more. It shows, right? Because you could have wrote one letter. But the fact that you're like, no, I have a passion for this person. I want to see this person succeed. I'm gonna keep writing and keep writing and keep writing because I can, and it will work because this is my lane. I feel like that's like those people will never forget those people who helped them.
Rachel, anything to add on this
I
one?
want to ask a question.
Yeah.
If the person was white And would you write that letter for that person, or would you mentor that person because you see them that they have that quality? Or so I think the same courtesy goes to like Black people, right? Don't look at it like when you, like they said, come alongside them, but it's because you see the gifting in that area and you want to help them succeed in that area, because you basically give that same courtesy you would if it was a white person and they had that same gifting, right? So don't, like, if that makes sense.
Have you guys ever been somebody's project and you knew it? It wasn't like the motives, like you said, to check the heart. You could just tell this was more about them than it was about you.
Yeah.
What's that feel like?
I kind of felt like shameful almost. Like this seems like a good cause, so I shouldn't step away from this, but I feel like I'm just a big sign.
Being exploited?
Yeah.
Wow. Colleen, Denise?
Honestly, no, I can't really
Good.
say that I've had that experience.
I'm glad.
To be honest, no, yeah.
I can't say that, and it's not in my state. No.
Yeah.
Well, 25%, that's better than higher. Well, those are all the questions I wrote down, but like something I always like to ask, and it's kind of a trick question, so if you don't have an answer, I understand, but is there a question I should be asking that I haven't? Because I would assume, sitting here in the seat of privilege as we've been talking about, that there are things that aren't even registering on my radar. Because just that's my reality. Is there anything I should be asking or we should be talking about, or anything else you want to educate me on? This has been very enlightening and I really appreciate it. I know I've benefited. I hope it hasn't been too terrible for you guys, and I hope people are watching. But
That's a good question.
Yes.
well, for the sake of the camera, because too long of a silence is too awkward, maybe if you come up with some more questions, we do a round two at some point. But I think that's those are my questions. I think unless anybody has anything they want to add or some parting words of wisdom.
Just that, if you have a question, I know for me, ask.
Okay.
Right? It's like it's worse to assume that like you have an answer, especially like in this situation, than just asking and saying like, okay, I do have the answer, or I just learned something new.
I would say, to echo that, it's okay to ask the question,
Yeah.
and even if you get it wrong, it's okay. I think that that's the key, and this is what we talked about with our students at school. The conversation, starting the conversation, that's where we're going to make progress. That's where we're starting from. So don't be afraid to ask the questions. You're not going to insult me if you ask something and it's awkward. I'd much rather you ask the question than stay silent.
Colleen, I want to ask you a specific question, and this isn't fair, I didn't warn you, but here you are spending your night on another Zoom call because you're in quarantine, but you wanted to be a part of this. So number one, thank you. Number two, what do you hope your kids experience better than you did because something like this happened?
Wow, that's a big one.
Told you it wasn't fair, but
So you're gonna owe me a coffee for this,
deal.
okay? Right. I hope that their experiences going forward would have been all the better because we started this conversation. I already know that their life will not look anywhere near mine, my experiences when I was growing up. And that's two part because I didn't grow up in Canada. I grew up in the Caribbean. So that's a different story there. But I know going forward, and I hope going forward that my son going into the store with his white friend, he will not feel this discomfort. He will feel just as comfortable walking into the store, going to the cinema, getting on the bus as his white counterpart. That's what I hope, that our children's future, not to sound cliche, will be much brighter and much more positive experiences than we've had.
What a fascinating conversation. I hope you have enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed being a part of it. Special thank you to Stetson, Rachel, Denise, and Colleen as our panelists for sharing their time and their stories. And thank you to you for joining us and for spending your time in this learning opportunity. If you have questions that have come up from this conversation about race, feel free to reach out to us with a direct message on social media or an email to communications@rexdalealliance.ca, and we'll see if we can continue this as a conversation, not just a presentation. But either way, thank you for joining us and keep looking out for whatever is next in our series on the church in the world.